Welcome back to our disaster management course. I'm Dr. Muni Pradeep, Assistant Professor, Department of Civil Engineering, SR University. So we are in Unit 1, Introduction to Disaster Management, and we are discussing on Part B of Lecture 5. So today topic is the Disaster Management Act 2005, its overview and importance. So I almost completed. Now only the pending is NDRF, National Disaster Response Force, and National Disaster Response Fund, and finally I'll explain one real world condition. Right, so without delay, I'll start the continuation class. You can see the image here, the right side we have National Institute of Disaster Management. The first one is in Delhi. You can see the second one, that is South Campus, which is established in Vijayawada, Andhra Pradesh. So what is National Institute of Disaster Management? So in previous class we discussed about the NDMA, NEC, NAC, everything. So this is the research institute. The National Institute of Disaster Management, we usually called as NIDM, which is constituted under the Act of Parliament with the main vision to play the role of a premier institute for capacity developments in India and the region. So in simple sense, I'll say, see, in disaster times, the NDRF people, the army people, the voluntaries, the IAS officers, IAS officers, everybody came to the disaster occurrence place, and they're acting according to the disaster. So how they know everything? Because they trained in this institute. So this premier institute, they'll develop the capacity developments in India. Right, now you understand, right? So the NIDM is established in New Delhi, and it is South Campus is located in Vijayawada, Andhra Pradesh. You can see the both the buildings. These are the real buildings, right? So what are the main objectives of National Institute of Disaster Management? The first objectives, this institute develop training programs for all the officials at the national level, state level, and district levels. So the prime minister, the chief minister, and the district magistrate, everybody they participated in these training programs. And this institute, they've developed the training programs for all these people. And also, this institute they conduct research on disaster risk reduction and the resilient buildings, or resilient mitigation techniques. And the third objective is this NIDM, they create training manuals and guidelines for all kind of hazards. You may see for the floods, the training manual is different. For the earthquake, the training manual is different. For the cyclone, the training manual is different. And for the man-made disasters, the training manuals are different. So this institute, this NIDM, they create the training manuals and the guidelines for all kind of hazards. See, I'm not using the term disaster here. And the main objective is to of NIDM is to promote the awareness among all the communities. Right? Now you understand the importance of NIDM. Now we discussed about the objectives. So what is the key functions? So the objectives only here I'm explaining in terms of the key functions. The first function is training and capacity building. So what is the training? So this NIDM, they created many workshops. So they conducted many workshops for all the IAS officers, IPS officers, and the engineers, the health officers, and the local administration team. And also this NIDM, they conducted specialized programs for all kind of hazards, which is natural as well as man-made hazards. And also this NIDM will provide the research and knowledge management in the form of, they maintains disaster databases and case studies. So what happened in 1999? So they have all the database. And is there similar incidents happened in all other countries? So they have all the databases and they have the reference case studies. So we can take the reference case studies and we can implement the same plan in the field. And also This NIDM, they publishes the journals, they publishes the reports, and they publishes the manuals. So with this only, all the IAS officers, IES officers, IPS officers, volunteers, they have gone through the data and they have gone through the case studies through that how they are acting in that disaster, how they are reacting to the disaster situation. And also, their mainly the key function is also to publish the policy supports. What so but in the last lecture, we discussed about this NDMAs, SDMAs, and DDMAs. They're preparing the action plans. On what basis? This NIDM will give you the work plan, everything to all these institutions. And it also, for suppose if any laws or policies are already implemented, if any suggestions or improvements are required, this NIDM will recommend the improvements to NDMA, all kind of national, state, and district bodies. And finally, so this NIDM will collaborate with the international agencies. So it is partners with UN agencies like UNDRR, UNDP, and SORC disaster management centers. So they'll work along with the other management activity boards, and whatever the useful implementations are required to Indian conditions, they'll simply rewriting in our Indian context, which is related to our Indian conditions. So these are the key functions of National Institute of Disaster Management, and the next one is National Disaster Response Force. So many people, they don't know the meaning of National Disaster Response Force, but they heard the term called NDRF. They heard this term NDRF. Whatever be the disaster happened, one team came, and that team we called as NDRF team. The full form of that NDRF is National Disaster Responsible Force. So what are the roles and responsibilities of this NDRF? That is, the first one is search and rescue operations. They are expert in search and rescue operations, and they are experts in medical assistance. They will provide the medical assistance, and they are the responsible for the disaster responses, and they know how to create the awareness among the communities and the preparedness, and they are the main reason to reduce the disaster risk reduction, and they provided the coordination and support to the local people, and they'll give the specialized training to the local people, local community people, and sometimes in international operations also this NDRF team is involved. So after the National Institute of Disaster Management, they took training. All the NDRF team is a ground reality. These people came to the field, and these people are the proactive people on the disaster management site. You can see the image here. These are the locations of NDRF teams availability. So you can see this image is already available in National Disaster Management Authority board. And the final one. So till now we talked many things: institutions, NDMA bodies, SDMA bodies, NDRF teams. For everything we need fund. So that is a last but not the least, the final one, that is National Disaster Response Fund. So it provides an immediate financial assistance to victims of notified natural disasters like floods, earthquakes, cyclones, droughts, etc. So usually in the news channels we saw a government announce 1 crore 1 crore financial assistance to the victims of disasters. So who provided the money? That is National Disaster Response Fund, and it is financed by the GOI, that is Government of India, through budgetary allocation. So every year budget, so we allocate some fund for as a National Disaster Response Fund, and based on the state government request for assistance after a disaster, an inter-ministerial central team (IMCT) inter-ministerial central team, they assesses the damage and they recommended funds. And also the fund dispersal is done after approval from the high level committees chaired by the Union Home Minister, like NEC. So but one major disadvantage here is the man-made disasters are generally not covered under this uh, National Disaster Response Fund. This is mainly eligible for natural disasters. So it was a big subject. Why it is not related to man-made disasters? So we'll explain in the coming classes. We'll discuss in the coming classes. So with this, I have completed the total body. Now, now. So now you heard all NDMAs, NEC, NAC, SDMA, SCC, SAC, DDMA, local panchayatis, and then district National Disaster Management Authority, NDRF team, National Disaster Management Fund. So all are at this moment, you people thought, yeah, this is very easy, you can remember. But after 2 to 3 days, you feel very unfamiliar with these words because all the words are looking like same. So that's why I just want to explain one hypothetical case. I came up with one hypothetical case, that is cyclone Prabha. So such kind of a cyclone never exists in our Indian continent. So this one I have taken the hypothetical case. So I'll explain the role of all these national bodies. Right? Just please go through it. I'll give you 30 seconds, then I'll start explaining. Right. So from this slide, next 3 to 4 slides, I'll talk about the one hypothetical case study, that is cyclone Prabha. So this slide is talking about the role of NDMA in this hypothetical case. So the main motto to make this institutional framework of the DM Act 2005 concrete and easy to understand. This slide and the following next 2 slides, they present a hypothetical case study, as we discussed already, a fictional cyclone that is called Pravah, and show how each national level institutions respond to it. So while the cyclone is hypothetical, the actions described are based on real procedures and real experiences from the actual cyclone responses in India. I'm repeating again, you can see here, even though whatever the cyclone I have taken here, that is hypothetical, but the actions described are based on the real procedures and real experiences from the actual cyclone responses in India. Right? So now we'll start. So the case study of cyclone Prabha is a hypothetical example created to explain how different disaster management bodies in India, they work together during a major disaster, right? So as I told already, although the cyclone is fictional, the actions described are based on real disaster management procedures followed in India during cyclones such as 1999 Odisha cyclone and cyclone Falin in 2013 and cyclone Fani in 2018. Okay, so the first thing, when a cyclone is expected to hit the coastal states like Andhra Pradesh or Orissa, the disaster management begins very long before the cyclone actually reaches our land. So the different organizations at national level, state level, and district levels, they perform different responsibilities. What is that responsibilities? The first one, at the national level, the National Disaster Management Authority, that is NDMA, which provides overall policy direction and strategic planning. Also, the NDMA does not directly carry out rescue work on the ground. Instead, it prepares a national guidelines and the national policies that states and districts must follow during the disaster. Repeating, this NDMA, that is National Disaster Management Authority, does not directly carry out any kind of rescue team on the ground. Why? Because the NDMA team head is the Prime Minister and all central ministers. So they cannot directly go to the rescue operations. But instead, they prepared a national guidelines and the national policies that states and districts must follow during these disasters. They'll simply overview the situation. right? For example, in the cyclone Pravah case, the NDMA issues cyclone preparedness guidelines through based on the whatever the past lessons we learned from all the previous cyclone experiences, and also these guidelines explain when the actual evacuation should start and how cyclone shelter should be designed. Depending, is there any introduction of resisting resilient infrastructure guidelines, and how relief camps should be function, and what safety measures we should follow. So this helps all the states follow a uniform disaster management system. So also the NDMA directs affected states to activate evacuation plans and open cyclone shelters. For suppose if Andhra Pradesh and Odisha are expected to be affected, the NDMA informs their individual state disaster management authorities. For suppose Andhra Pradesh State Disaster Management Authority as well as Orissa Board State Disaster Management Authority to begin the emergency actions immediately. And another important role of the NDMA is long-term recovery and mitigation. We explained these 2 points. We highlighted these 2 points many times. The another role of NDMA is long-term recovery and the mitigation. So after the cyclone, the NDMA may recommend funds for rebuilding the houses and cyclone resistant designs. So this reduces future disaster risk instead of rebuilding weak infrastructure again. Instead of developing the weak infrastructure again, we are rebuilding houses with cyclone resistant designs. Those shelters should resist the high speed winds, all these things. So coming to the next important organization, that is the role of National Executive Committee (NEC) in Cyclone Pravah. So the next important organization is the National Executive Committee (NEC). While the NDMA prepares the policies, this NEC is responsible for actual coordination and execution of disaster response activities. I am repeating. So whatever till now we discussed about NDMA, while the NDMA prepares policies, this NEC is responsible for actual coordination and execution of disaster response activities. So this NEC works under the chairmanship of the Union Home Secretary and coordinates different ministries and departments during emergencies. When uh, when the cyclone Pravah is detected by the Indian Meteorological Department, the NEC immediately starts coordination activities. Right? So the first Indian Meteorological Department will give you the detect there is a chances of cyclone. Then immediately this NEC starts coordination activities. So the Indian Meteorological Department continuously track the cyclone's speed, the direction, the intensity and expected landfall locations. So this information is shared with all the departments. Also, the NEC coordinates with the Ministry of Power to protect the electricity infrastructure and arrange repair teams before the cyclone hits. Also, this NEC will help restore electricity very quickly after the disaster. So, when any disaster happens, the first and foremost the area of damage is electricity board. All electricity power lines, everything was collapsed, and it is very harmful to the people. It is it is increasing the disaster intensity. It coordinates with the Ministry of Health, and also now first the NEC is coordinated with the all the ministries to individually. In the first one, it is already what we discussed. It is coordinated with the Ministry of Power to protect the electricity infrastructure. After that, it coordinates with the Ministry of Health to prepare the hospitals, to medical teams, to arrange the ambulances and arranging an emergency medicines. It is also coordinates with the Ministry of Defense to keep the Army, Navy and Air Force ready for rescue operations. See here, I am only talking about the cyclone. I am considering the cyclone Prabha. That's why here the NEC is mainly coordinating with the Ministry of Power, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Defense. So depending upon the type of disaster, it is coordinating with the concerned department. Also, the one of the most important tasks of NEC is deploying the National Disaster Response Force, that is NDRF, before the cyclone reaches the land. And these NDRF teams are sent in advance to a vulnerable districts so they can begin rescue operations immediately after the immediate rainfalls. So this early deployment saves many lives during the disasters. And finally, the NEC also prepares a national response plan specifically for this cyclone Prabha. This plan assigns responsibilities to each ministry and each agency for pre-disaster, during the disaster, and post-disaster operations. For this, NEC assigns responsibilities to each and every ministry during all three stages of the disaster. And the third important body is the National Advisory Committee, that is NAC. So till now we discussed about the role of NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, NEC. Now we are talking about the National Advisory Committee, that is NAC. So the NAC mainly provides the scientific, technical and expert advice. It includes specialties such as meteorologists, engineers, environmental scientists, and public health experts. Right, I'm repeating again. The NAC, the National Advisory Committee, includes the specialists such as meteorologists, engineers, environmental specialists, scientists, and public health experts. The meteorologists in the NAC analyze weather forecasts and explain possible cyclone paths and uncertainties. The first meteorologists in the NAC analyze weather forecasts and explain the possible cyclone paths and uncertainties happen. So their scientific interpretation helps authorities to decide which areas should be evacuated first and how severe the cyclone may become. So this is what the importance of NAC team. And the second one, that is engineers, usually we call civil engineers here. The civil engineers in the NAC team inspect cyclone shelters and recommend strengthening weak structures before the landfalls. For example, if a shelter roof is weak or damaged, so the emergency repairs may be suggested to ensure public safety during the high winds. And the third one, that is environmental scientists, they advise on mangrove protection and restoration. Here the very important point was mangrove protection. What is it, mangrove protection? We planted the trees. That mangrove trees, they'll grow even in the salt water. So what is that mangrove trees? What is the impacts, that we'll explain in the coming classes. So here these environmental scientists are mainly advising on mangrove protection and the restoration of mangrove trees on the coastal area. These mangroves, they act as a natural barriers that reduces storm surges intensity. They reduces the impacts of the and the intensity of the storm surges. The healthy mangrove forest can significantly reduce the coastal flooding as well as wave impact during the cyclones. And final one, the public health experts. They prepare a disaster prevention plans because cyclones often damage water supply as well as a sanitation supply. This cyclone water already mixed with the drinking water, sanitation water. So this is very concern in that situation. So after floods and cyclones, diseases such as cholera, the dengue, leptospirosis may spread very quickly. The experts therefore recommend water purification, water sanitation, water sanitation measures, and then vaccination and mainly the vector disease control programs. So this is the team NAC. They are giving expert advices regarding that cyclone situation. Next. Uh, Coming to the next slide, so we already discussed about all the three levels of national bodies. Now we are talking about the state level. So at the state level, the State Disaster Management Authority, that is SDMA, implements disaster management plans within the state. So this is the responsible for within the state. Every state has individual SDMAs. The SDMA coordinates state departments such as police department, healthcare department, the transport department, irrigation department, electricity department, and local administration. So this SDMA is responsible for coordination between all the inter departments in the state level. It ensures the evacuation orders are carried out properly and the cyclone shelters are opened in vulnerable districts. So now coming to the SEC, which is equivalent to NEC, the State Executive Committee supports the SDMA in implementing emergency response measures. State level coordination is very important because each state has different geographical, social and infrastructure conditions. And the final one, at the district level, the District Disaster Management Authority performs the most direct field level work. So these are the people, the DDMA people, they directly enter into the field and they'll do all the field work. Also, the head of this DDMA, that is the district collector. So the district collector generally leads the DDMA. We discussed already. The district officials conduct evacuation of people from very low-lying coastal areas and they manage the relief camps, they distribute the food and drinking water, they restore the roads very quickly and they'll restore the communication system and also mainly they are coordinating the rescue operations. So the DDMA is extremely important because it directly interacts with the affected communities. So they are in the field, they know the real field condition, what is the intensity, what is the impacts, right? During the disasters, the district authorities become the first line of administration for saving the lives and providing the immediate relief. So this entire system shows that disaster management in India works through a multi-level institutional framework. So till now, we already discussed NDMA, the national level, state level and district level. In national level, that is NDMA, NEC and NAC. State level, SDMA, SCC and SAC, the final in district level. Sorry, there is no SAC in the state level. And the final one, DDMA, district level disaster management authority. So the NDMA provides the policy direction, the NEC coordinates operational activities, the NAC provide technical expertise, the SDMA manages state level implementation, and finally the DDMA performs ground level execution. So all these organizations, they work together to reduce the disaster losses and protect the people, infrastructure and the environment. And finally, coming to the summary, this lecture 5, both the parts we highlighted. We discussed about the Disaster Management Act 2005 and introduction, overview and objectives, and national, state and district disaster management authorities, their roles, their responsibilities and their functions. And then in this part we discussed about the National Institute of Disaster Management, where all the research work, all the research work is going on. And the next one, the National Disaster Response Force, who are actually participating in the evacuation. And the final one, National Disaster Response Fund, which is related to the funds released during the disaster time. Right? So I hope you people understand very clearly, because before this lecture 5, I told many times all these organization bodies I'll explain in the coming classes, because these 5 lectures I have nearly prepared nearly 5 hours of the content. This is the overview of total disaster management course. In this course, I already explained um, what are the disasters, what kind of disasters, what is the different definitions, hazards, vulnerabilities, risk reductions, and then what are the preparedness plans, prevention activities, mitigation activities. And now in the lecture 5 I have explained the organizational institutions. So this 5 hours course, this all 10 lectures will I have explained in detail. I took more time. I know that because I have to explain in detail about each and every point. So I have taken some real world examples and I illustrated in a better way to understand you people. So from next video onwards, I won't take this much in-depth explanation because I already gave the overview of the disaster management course. So from the next lecture onwards, I'll simply pick one disaster name. For suppose I have picked some earthquake and I only talk about the earthquake. I talk about in the earthquake perspective. So what is a earthquake, what kind of hazard it is, and who is the vulnerable persons, and then what is the causes of that impact, and then if that hazard will occur or the disaster will occur, what are the impacts in social, economic and environmental only in the context of earthquake. And finally we'll discuss about the mitigation techniques, and the last step if required, what are the organizational bodies and their roles. So next lecture onwards, it's very simple and it is very confined to single disaster, and we'll discuss in detail. Right. So this brings us the end of the lecture 5, that is the Disaster Management Act 2005 overview and importance. Um, Let me leave you one thought before completing this course. Every institution we study today, that is the NDMA, the NEC, the NS, the SDMA, the DDMA, NIDM, and the NDRF. These bodies built in response to disasters that exposed gaps in the India preparedness. For suppose the 2004 tsunami showed us that we had no national coordination mechanism, and the 2001 Bhuj earthquake showed us that we had no professional disaster response force. These institutions are India's institutional memory of past suffering, and our investment is ensuring that the future generations face those hazards with far greater protection. Right? So with the completion of the lecture 5, we have now covered the full scope of subject introduction to disaster management. And as usual, please review today's notes carefully before the next classes. This lecture contains a large number of institutional names, compositions and functions that are important for your examinations. And still, if you have any doubts, you can reach out to me nmp560@gmail.com, or you can comment your doubts below the YouTube videos. I'll be very happy to review it and answer those questions. Thank you all and I will see you in the next class. Thank you very much.